So thank you. Bonjour, bienvenue tout le monde. Nous sommes encore ici. So we're back and happy 2026. It sure isn't 2015 anymore. And as the head of the IMF said recently in Davos, we're not in Kansas anymore. I'm, as leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, and Member of Parliament for Saanich Gulf Islands, wanted to address the immediate concerns we have for this session. It was funny how my friend Steve McKinnon didn't mention the bill that worries me the most right now as we're gathered together. Although I think, en question en français, je pense qu'avec le but de la question de l'implémentation du budget, the Budget Implementation Act, unfortunately, I do carry it with me to make sure I can point out the sections that bother me, but it is over 600 pages long. It is the ultimate of omnibus budget bills. It changes 20 other laws, and it hasn't been properly studied at all. There were a number of really controversial pieces of legislation that carried at second reading through the fall, and members of the Ottawa Corps will know what it means when I say they passed on division. Il n'est pas un vote, pas un seul vote avec une registration de le vote des députés chacun. So I wasn't allowed to vote against or for Bill C-12, one of the ones that the government House leader just identified as one of their big priorities. Bill C-12 doesn't ensure safe borders, but it does ensure that refugee rights are infringed. And I'm not alone. The Association of Refugee Lawyers of Canada has said also that this violates Canada's international commitments to international refugee law. In any case, that bill went through, quote unquote, on division at second reading, which meant I couldn't register my vote against it. And when it was ultimately bundled together with other bills on the last day when Parliament met, which was December 11th, our last day was supposed to be December 12th. You'll recall we adjourned a day early based on a unanimous consent motion that rushed through a number of bills all together by unanimous consent. All I could do was say to Mr. McKinnon's office and others, I'll be voting no. This created some amount of concern because unanimous consent means what it sounds like, and one member of Parliament who doesn't agree means your unanimous consent motion isn't going to work. So in negotiating with Liberal House Leader and Deputy House Leader, they said, what's the problem? So my problem isn't that I don't want everybody to catch the planes they've now booked to go home a day early. My problem is that it seems wrong that I don't get to record my vote against Bill C-12 and on other bills that where I would C-4, where I would register concern and vote against them. So what happened was they amended the unanimous consent motion to end with noting the opposition of the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands. But there's been a degree, an erosion of parliamentary democracy in this place since the election that passes mostly unnoticed, because parliamentary democracy doesn't get a lot of attention even in the best of times, and this isn't the best of times. Bills are passed without proper study, notably Bill C-5, which had a programming motion that was breathtakingly anti-democratic back in June. We now have the passage also of Bill C-12, first on division, which means, for viewers, that when debate collapses, in other words, there's no more speakers to speak to it, the Speaker says, so it now passes on division. And the only members of Parliament who can object and say, we want a recorded vote on this, are members of what's called a recognized party, which in this case is, in this Parliament, Liberals, Conservatives, or the Bloc. Il y a un temps passé quand c'est le droit des députés, 5 députés des autres partis, les partis plus petits, ensemble, exigeaient un vote enregistré. So when I was first elected in 2011, I never knew I was lucky then, but there were 4 members of the Bloc Québécois, not a recognized party, and me, Green Party, not a recognized party. But the rule then was 5 members of Parliament could stand up and demand a recorded vote. We can't do that anymore. Those rules changed during COVID. So we have 7 NDP MPs and me who generally, on these votes on division, who knows how people would have voted, because on division means it's gone through. Now, you can't do on division at third reading and at report stage but they bundled those together in the unanimous consent motion on December 11th so that the House ended quickly. On December 10th, the debate on this monster, Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Act, passed second reading on division. Now, I hope that the Speaker and the government will agree that a bill that touches this many other pieces of legislation needs to go to more than one committee. As things now stand, since Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Bill, passed on division on December 10th, it's now ready to second reading. It's now ready to go to the committee for study. The committee to study it is designated as the Finance Committee. But there are many sections in here that should go to other committees for proper study. And if I can point out one thing that's of concern, and I did see just this week a coalition of organizations and individuals, David Suzuki, but also Council of Canadians, and also Sierra Club and Greenpeace, a number of organizations saying, what's this here, Division 5 of Bill C-15, is amendments to the Red Tape Reduction Act. If you're unfamiliar with them, you find that pages 30. I did have this, my question and question period, on December 9th, so I am the only member of Parliament who's raised this so far in this place to say, can the Minister of Finance explain why any minister is going to be allowed to exempt any entity from the operation of any federal law within their area as a minister? Any minister can exempt any entity from any federal law in their jurisdiction if they think it's in the public interest. And there are no criteria in the bill to tell us what would direct the minister's attention to think it's in the public interest. I won't go on about it at this point, just to say it's a priority for me, for the Green Party, and I think for Canadians across the country to have amendments to Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Act. I have some other concerns with other sections of this act, but certainly I want to see Division 5, the Red Tape Reduction Act, substantially amended, if not deleted, Division 5 of Bill C-15. We're looking at a lot of other bills that we still have not had properly studied in this place. Things moved fast, as I said, with decisions on division and no study, or virtually no study in committees. I hope that as Mr. Carney gets more accommodated to his role as a parliamentarian, that Parliament will be more respected. I'm particularly concerned as well, and I'll be asking the Auditor General to look into this, a number of the newly created entities that have been created since the election, things like the Build Canada Homes and the Major Projects Office and the Office to Organize Defence Procurement, are not organized as one would expect within a relevant department reporting to a minister, but are special operating agencies under Treasury Board regulation and thus are under Treasury Board confidentiality for things like their work plans, their budgets, their special operating agencies, which is of concern for me because of the lack of transparency that goes with being a special operating agency. I certainly will be pressing this government to see where is the climate plan. I heard there was reference to it today that it's not just that the current climate plan has been changed. There is no current climate plan. Much of what the previous government had in place has been removed. Nothing new has been added. And regardless of what we may say about the MOU with Alberta, the current government doesn't have a climate plan, and that's quite unacceptable this far into their mandate. So I think at that point, having really skimmed only the surface of the things we'll be pushing for, we'll remain vigilant on human rights. That's why I can't support Bill C-12. I was horrified that that be the one bill, one of the three bills that our government House leader, friend Steve McKinnon, mentioned. That one needed proper study, particularly in the ways it infringes on refugee rights. But don't forget that C-12 took portions of what was originally introduced as Bill C-2. Bill C-2, the Strong Borders Act, is still on the order paper, and now that they have forced through with the unanimous consent motion the last stages of C-12 in this place, one would expect that they're going to, because Gary Andesangri said C-2 isn't dead, it's not being withdrawn. those were the portions of the Strong Border Act that remain once you take out what passed in C-12 for warrantless opening of mail and warrantless access to internet information. So I expect that we'll also see a new version of C-2. But for the ones that I'd also say that Steve McKinnon is very busy, and I hope that in his role as Transport Minister, he will bring back the bill that died on the order paper, Bill C-33, that was ready to go to be passed. It had gone through clause by clause in committee, that would ban the export of thermal coal from Canada and give us more protection for inland waterways. The job of a Minister of Transportation is a full-time job, and it's obviously, I have a lot of sympathy for Mr. McKinnon in his role. I also have sympathy for the Prime Minister, who wants to be dealing with a President of the United States who's petulant and sends out notices that are on his social media account to say, I'm now uninviting you. Take this letter, I think what it says, take this letter as representing that you've now lost your, I mean, I don't know, Donald Trump obviously writes his own tweets. I suppose he's imagining that he ever went to law school and he thinks this is how somebody who's smart would write a letter. It's not, but that's all right. I do accept that our Prime Minister is very smart, and I'm sure he wrote his own speech for Davos. It was well written, it was well constructed, it was rightly celebrated, but it does not represent a vision for Canada, and non, ce n'est pas une vision mondiale, pas du tout. C'est une déclaration d'état mondial actuellement. It's a statement of how things are in the world right now. But I want Canada to step up and participate in saying, what does the new world order look like? And it's foundationally the United Nations Charter, and it's foundationally respect for human rights, and working with other democracies and not deciding that we'll jettison human rights in exchange for trade deals. I'll close there and happy to answer any questions. Maintenant, vegetarian.
What the government should do for Bill C-9.
We're going to forego the discussion. I hope you'll leave your comments and thoughts. Thank you for joining us this morning. Like, follow, subscribe. We'll be back.